In the next few examples, we're going to look at answering some questions by reading information from a pie chart and paying particular attention to some of the additional information that's provided in these examples that wasn't provided in the first two. So in example 3, we have a researcher who surveyed 1,441 randomly selected people and asked if they plan to vote for candidate A in an upcoming election. Of those surveyed, 70% responded yes, 30% responded no, and we have a pie chart depicting that information. The first question we're asked is, do the majority of people surveyed plan to vote for candidate A? This language about a majority is a very specific question. We need to make sure we understand what that's asking us. In order to have a majority, we need to have more than 50%. 50% itself is not enough for a majority. The result has to be larger than 50%. In this case, 70% of people responded yes, they would vote for candidate A. So yes, a majority do plan to vote for that candidate. And we know that because 70% is larger than 50%. In part B, we're asked, of those surveyed, how many plan to vote for candidate A? Just looking at the pie chart, we can't determine that information. But if we reference back to the question, we are given the information we need to come up with that result. So if we're communicating information with a pie chart or someone else is communicating that, somewhere they should give us a value for N, which is the sample size, the number of people who were surveyed or number of objects that were studied, so that we can take that value N and multiply it by the percent of people who responded, in this case, that they would vote for candidate A. Meaning in this case, we're going to take that total of 1,441 people, multiply that by 70% to come up with how many people responded yes, not just the percentage. So we'll rewrite this as 1,441 times 0.7. And then when we multiply those together, we get 1,008.7. But in this case, our answer is about number of people. We can't have a fraction or a portion of a person. So we wouldn't report that answer. We would just want to know to round this to approximately 1,009 people. Because we had the sample size and we had the percent of people who responded yes, we're able to come up with the number of people who responded yes. We can look at answering those same two questions, but now with a different pie chart and a different sample size. In this case, there were 818 people who were randomly selected and asked the same question if they plan to vote for candidate A. Of those surveyed, 50% responded yes, 50% responded no. So we're asked in part A, do the majority of people surveyed plan to vote for candidate A? And in this case, we would say no, because 50% is not greater than 50%. That's a little bit of a redundant statement, but just to emphasize that idea. In this case, it was evenly split. In order to have a majority, we would have to have some percentage larger than 50%, even if it was 50.1%, something a little bit larger than 50%. In this case, we have an even split, so no, we don't have the majority planning to vote for candidate A. In part B, we're asked of those surveyed how many plan to vote for candidate A. So again, we'll take the sample size, the number of people surveyed, times the percent who replied yes. So this will be 818 times 50% in this case, or 0.5, which will give us 409 people.